hey, so let's hear more about let's get to know Todd Gordon. And so, Todd, maybe I'll give you a chance to kind of fly over. Okay, a radio introduction is different than like, hey, I met you at some sort of industry event or at the Hy-Vee or something.
Because we are actually already know you. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
awkward
that would
to ask questions like, "Hey, Todd, we've never met before."
Yeah,
we totally have.
Yeah, but maybe just tell people a little bit about yourself. So like, what your, because we focused on some of your career stuff, kind of like how you got started in education, how that trajectory went. Maybe let's just start there.
Sure. Well, I'm a preacher's kid, number one. So I grew up loving home, mom and dad, and dad was in the ministry for over 60 years and finally stopped supply preaching just a couple of years ago at 82 years old. So,
oh man,
he was still writing sermons. I don't think he's pulling them out of file. I think he was still trying to be relevant at 82 years old. So,
nice.
I was blessed with great parents and small community and just a lot of support. So my road to education really is it's why I believe what I believe. I was standing in a gym hallway waiting for who is now my wife of almost 40 years. She was going to go on break from painting the school. I'd quit college about 6 months earlier and was just kind of working a couple jobs, and my hair was really flowing very nicely back in the early 80s, down to my shoulders, and my scraggly beard, worse than this one.
Was it a mullet?
You probably could be considered a mullet more than anything, but
just trying to get
it's a flowing mullet, Dan. That's what it was.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. If I can get Todd Gordon to send me one and you text mullet to the Live from the Path complaint line, I'll respond and send you this picture. There you go.
So I'm standing in that doorway, and my high school basketball coach, who next to my dad was the second most influential man in my life, is 6'5", played basketball at Kearney State, and came over and poked me in the chest, said, "Why don't you go do something with your life?" And he walked away.
Well, that's awesome.
I am.
And so I thought, okay, well, I guess that's what I needed, the prod I needed. And I cut my hair, and I shaved up my scraggly beard, and I enrolled at Iowa Western Community College, went to Northwest Missouri State, and became a teacher and a coach. And
that is the coolest story.
and And then, 37 years later, I closed that chapter after several stops and coaching and being an athletic director and activities administrator. And the coolest part of that story is my wife planned a surprise retirement and 60th birthday party for me just this last Saturday. And Coach Gady has been struggling. He's lost 40, 50 pounds, and he's got some health issues. And it was total shock to me to see people that I thought we were meeting about 2 or 3 couples, and
right.
Lo and behold, she'd paid other people to come try and be my friend. But the first person I see when I walk on the corner is Coach Gady.
Yeah.
Wow.
With a cane and just weak and feeble and crying, and that's the first person I hugged, and we hugged for a long time. So,
what a cool deal! Like I think if you were to ask me, hey, do people's words, do that?
Yeah,
maybe I'm a skeptic on it. In my experience, like I don't. Maybe it's because we come in here, we blow hard, and we're like, words don't do anything because we waste them. But like to hear. Especially something where like he didn't windbag it. He just said, "Hey man, here's what I saw." And like, why don't you go do something? That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
That is awesome.
My fear is on our current generation, they just push back.
Maybe
it's
I
just
am.
a difference.
I'm growing my hair.
I would say yes, and I would say no, because kids still want relationships now, and we'll get into that later.
Yep.
And I'll get into why, but that's why I believe in the power of moments, and you'll hear me say that over and over. And that's what I write about a lot is moments, because moments matter. And kids need to know we care about them. And we can say things to kids. These kids nowadays, it takes a little further to get into them now.
Yeah.
And might take a little more time. But kids still want relationship, and they still need to have that relationship, not just with their phone and not with texting people. They need to talk to people. And it's up to us to continue to do that and not give up on anybody. And that one moment can make a difference I think, in somebody's life, and even nowadays, maybe if they're going to think about taking their own life. I think that's why I said good morning to everyone who walked through the door, and I said hello to everyone I saw in the hallway, because I just want to validate. I wanted to validate them and let them know that they exist, because there's too many people that are walking around with their head in their phone and don't feel like they exist. So we need to give them that human connection.
Yep.
And, yeah, you do get pushback. You do. But I would never stop and will never stop trying to have a relationship with people.
That's interesting. Is to think about. I think it's easy to say kids are different, but like in some ways, kids are, in addition to, can be a product of the environment around them, parental
Absolutely.
environment, societal environment, and so like the question, I suppose, to what you're talking about is not just, okay, well, they're started to be born different 15 years ago because of the aspartame, but what about our society around them is changing them that they need it more, or it takes more to get into it, but like the core need isn't gone on what
Exactly.
people need.
There's still a soul there.
Yeah, right, right,
There's a heart and there's a soul there.
right,
And that soul doesn't change. It's just the stuff that's gone into it.
yeah,
And that's why it's important for people, not just educators, but it's important for educators because they're on the front lines with these kids.
yep,
But it's important for all of us who are going to touch kids' lives, even at church, whatever,
yep,
that we stay current on what they've got in their hand,
right,
the pressures they have.
yep,
We just can't say, well, back in my day, that's the way it was. And
Right,
my
right.
gosh, rub some dirt on it and let's go. Well, no, you don't rub dirt on it anymore.
right,
They don't want to rub dirt on it.
yeah,
They don't need to rub dirt on it. They need somebody. They need more hugs now. We know that.
yeah,
Yeah.
But we just have to stay current on where they're at and what they're dealing with, and just know that every one of them matters.
yeah. So what was your what did you when you started teaching? What did you teach?
I taught. My degree was physical education. When you're going to coach, I guess I learned how to swim in college, and
Right,
couldn't tell you anything. I do know how not to drown, but so I had physical education, but it took me 10 years to get there.
yeah,
To teach physical education. I taught special ed. I taught some resource room. I taught computer. My first job in Walnut, Iowa, we had 25 Apple IIe computers, double disk drives now, double. Not a single, it's double disk
Taxes
drive.
went up last year.
And when all those things were cranked up, the temperature in the room went up about 40 degrees, and it sounded like jet engines were going to get ready to take off. So, and then my next job 2 years later, I was teaching computer concepts and some programming stuff,
yeah.
and I was on 2GS. So now we had the floppy drive.
Oh,
or
yeah,
the,
right.
The little disk
The
drives,
discs,
right?
yeah.
So in 2 years, that's where that went, and then on it went. But I taught a lot of phys ed, taught special ed, and I taught a lot of computer and computer science type stuff too.
A utility
at
man.
several
They
instances.
said, "Hey, man, we need something. Where's Todd?"
I can play all the positions.
Nice.
That's awesome. And so, how many different school districts have you gone through in your career?
I served 9 different school districts
Wow.
in that 37 years, an average of 4.5 years, per district.
Yep.
And my path was different, but I felt that was my path.
Yeah.
And I never apologized for that. I felt like my job was going in to make something better.
Yep.
And then I wanted to I got the itch to go do that again.
Yeah. Yep.
And not that I had opportunities. Then I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. And it was usually someplace where I could go and take something that was been messed up a little bit.
Yep.
And maybe kind of put it together and then leave it for the next dude.
Yeah.
For the next person to take care of it. And that's what I felt my calling was.
Yeah.
And, my wife about 4 or 5 moves in said, "I'm not moving again." Well, she did it for another 3 or 4 times. So I don't know if that's shame on her or what, but and it was funny about, I think probably just a couple years ago when we moved to Jefferson and I went from Des Moines Roosevelt to Greene County. I wanted to finish in a smaller school.
Yep.
Kind of because that's what I am.
Yeah.
Small town guy. And I love my time at Des Moines Roosevelt and that experience with the cultures there and everything, and experiencing the only way I can describe it is corporate school.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a whole different animal.
Yep.
The layers in the school. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
But that's not where I wanted to finish. So when we moved out to Jefferson, I said, I thank Deb again for moving, but she said, just think about all the friends we've got,
right,
in different places, in different towns.
Yep.
And I kind of felt that last weekend at that party and that get together was because there's people there from every community I'd served.
That's awesome.
And I just was blessed to see people like that and know that was it. So I think that's the other thing I tell people and I tell kids. I said, your path is your path. And I can throw in, I believe my path was directed by God. Not that I was anything special, but I think he directed where he wanted me to go at different times in my life.
Yep.
I believe that. But your path is your path based on your skill set, what you can do. And if it's your skill set to stay in the place for 35 years and touch community there, great.
Yep.
Don't apologize for that. You don't have to compare yourself to me or anybody else. That just wasn't me.
Yeah. Yep.
That wasn't my heart.
Right.
So it was 9 and my longest was 10. Had 3 schools of 2 years each.
Yep.
And most of them were 4 or 5 right in that area.
Yeah. So your trajectory then is you're teaching, you're coaching. What did you like? Was there a favorite sport or something that you coached?
Well, it was basketball.
Primary basketball. Yep.
Yeah, primary basketball
Girls,
and golf.
boys.
Both.
Both.
I started coaching the old 6-on-6 game back in the day in the middle '80s, and did that. Most of it was with boys.
Yep.
But I ended. I actually had to coach the girls one year at Greene County. Couldn't find a coach, and I told the superintendent. I said, I don't know. I guess I hadn't been a head coach in 10 years, and actually 17 years.
Yeah.
And so I did it.
Yeah. Are we still doing the hoop and the ball thing? Okay. I
Yeah. I think I can pull some stuff out of that.
I mean, as you get older, do you and you're still coaching, like, do you look out and go, we ain't gonna run, forget it? I mean, come on. I don't want to follow you around, and you guys don't really want to do it, so, I mean, whatever.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it was basically basketball and golf. I coached volleyball. I coached softball. I coached baseball.
Yeah.
In some capacity here and there, track and field.
Yep.
So I did a little bit of everything and had my hand in a lot of different sports. But
and then you moved, kind of the latter part of your career, you moved into some of the activities director role and stuff like that. How was that transition from, I don't know, line level teaching, coaching into some of the administrative work?
Well, when you move up a level, basically, I would say you're moving from teaching, coaching, where you're interacting with kids every day. Now, my first athletic director's job and trainer down by Council Bluffs, I was still teaching as well. I taught like 5 or 6 phys ed classes a day. So I had every kid and trainer, 7 through 12, and I loved that. And then I'd go do AD stuff. And but then when I became a full-time administrator at Carlisle and then Roosevelt, Greene County, I was just a full-time administrator.
Yeah.
You lose that layer with the kids.
Yeah.
And so you've got to find ways to do that. And that's the biggest thing you miss. And really I miss colleagues and things like that. But when people have asked me over the last couple months, what are you going to miss when they go back to school? The kids. I mean, I'd get out of my desk every passing period and just go stand in the hallway and hope somebody'd talk to me.
Right.
Or I'd try to give up a conversation. I'd try to, whether it's a, hey, good game last night or good luck tonight or how's the practice going, how's the musical going, so you just try to find a conversation just to talk with kids and connect. But that's the thing you miss the most. But when you go up that layer,
do you feel like so a lot of, and I suppose this happens with every generation, right? They're like kids these days,
Yeah.
That's the exact phrase I was just thinking is like, how would you complete the sentence where some people might go, kids these days. If you were to start a sentence and go, kids these days, like how would you end that?
Mm-hmm.
They need loved.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't, there's no way about it. I mean, they're kids and they just need love. They're looking for love.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in all the wrong places, and I think there's songs about that. But it's amazing to me, some of these kids, and I wouldn't just talk to the athletes or talk to the musicians, just the kids and activities, mind you, because that might only be 40-50% of the kids in the school.
Yeah.
The other 50%, well, they matter.
Right.
And so you try to find where they are. If they work at Fairway, they work at Hy-Vee, You might say, hey, how's work going? Or, you find something to connect with them. Try to find some little piece just to have a conversation. And it's funny. It's not funny. It's just a fact. If I'm standing in the hallway and a kid walks by and I just say, hey, how you doing? How are things going? How's classes going? Where are you headed now? Oh, you're headed to ag. Okay. Well, why do you like ag?
Nobody likes ag. No, I mean.
But it's amazing how sometimes those kids, then they start to find you.
Uh-huh.
And if I would go out and maybe sit in the lunchroom and during the lunch hour just to hang out, they might come up and start a conversation then a little bit later. And you don't know how you're going to connect with the kids. So,
Yep.
But they all matter. And it's amazing how many nowadays, the kids these days.
Yeah.
Kids these days still
It does harken
need to
back
have a trusted
like,
adult.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it harkens back to like there's nothing new under the sun here.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the same. They're people, right? Like they're image bearers of God, and like where I think maybe we get stuck a little bit is a little bit of our own nostalgia on how it was back in our day or whatever you wanted to think about it, and a lot of it is centered around technology. Where the kids get a lot of their what they feel like is their community from their devices, right? There are people on the other end of the things that they're talking on all the time, but they're not deep communities, right? Like they're shallow communities, one-offs, and like if there's anything that's been true, especially through our more technological world, is like the written word does not have the same inflection as the spoken word, right? Like even when you're talking to your wife, she'll say something and you just read it right off the bat and you're like, well, what the heck is this? But like if you'd have read it with an up inflection instead of a down in one word, the whole sentence changed, and so like if all of your communication is done on a flat page, written word device, it makes it very hard to have deep community like we're talking about, and so like it's interesting to hear you say that because like I think the more that like I get involved with the youth in our town, like the same as they've always been, and whatever red letter big banner thing you're like, well, here's the new thing we're going through, and it's like it's the same dog with a different tail on, right? Like it's the exact same thing.
I bought a new hat.
Right. We're not you know what they're not finding in schools these days? You're gonna have to back me up on this, Gordon. Like the sheer amount of kids smoking in the bathroom like they used to, right? Like back in the day. Smoking is, I mean, we've done a job. Like it's the devil. It's the devil, these cigarettes. You know what I'm saying? Like we've won. And so like the devil back in 1975, it was the cigarettes and the left-handers, and the delinquency out in the parking lot. And like anymore, like it just shifts to a different thing, right? Really what I think what I see is a lack of community, right? Because it breeds loneliness, and loneliness breeds depression and anxiety. And like if you see the sheer amount of kids that want to claim depression or anxiety just so they claim something.
Hey man, I heard something on the radio today that it said they surveyed college kids, adults, and it was 1 out of 3.
Yeah.
1 out of 3 said I'm dealing with like some sort of diagnosed depression or anxiety.
The statistics are amazing.
Yeah.
And really eye-opening and disheartening.
Yeah.
Really.
And I think a lot of it is like there's a good portion of it that's true, and there's a good portion of it where people just want an identity to explain themselves. This is why I am. This is why I feel the way that I do. Right? Instead of, once again, that relationship that goes, I know exactly who you are, and you are not that.
Right.
You know what what often separates someone from going, hey, this is something I'm dealing with versus this is something of who I am, is the amount of hope you have to come out on the other side. Right? Like if something's weighing heavy on you and you don't see a path out of it, then you're going to identify with it and say, this is who I am. But like if you've got, and I get this is way more nuanced than I'm giving it, but the broad point is that like if I look out and say, man, I'm feeling real low today, but like I've got a healthy community around me. I know people love me. I'm reminded that God is good and he created me in his image and likeness. Then something where I feel low feels like something that I'm walking through, but I have a hope that I can get out on the other side.
Right. And I think that's one of the things I keep in my mind all the time, whether you're in the school, whether now that I'm retired and I'm talking to ADs and coaches online or in person if I'm training them with the job I'm doing now, whether I'm going into the grocery store or into the convenience, wherever I'm at. The phrase I always keep in the back of my mind, it's by a guy by the name of Manny Scott, he's one of the original freedom writers out in San Francisco as a high school kid. but now he teaches and speaks to schools all over the country. And in one of his books, one of his quotes is, he tells teachers, and his lifelong goal is, every day you are someone's best hope. So I think we need to all try and be somebody's best hope every day.
Yeah.
Whether it's just a thank you to that person who just served us at the restaurant, maybe we're their best hope. I think we can always be somebody's best hope. We don't know who it is,
Right.
and we'll never know.
Right.
And so, but I think that's just the way we need to treat people.
Yeah.
Is give them a hope
That's right.
that there is kindness, there is good out there, because there's too many people living in the shadows, and to get them out of those shadows, sometimes we just got to offer them some sort of hope.
Yeah.
We just had a gentleman pass away here a few weeks ago, and I didn't realize the depth of the conversations he would had with the children around here, and it was always just jokes over the donut at church. They'd get a donut, he'd say, "That's my donut," and I knew there was a couple he had joked with, and that was, but the kids were coming out of the woodwork like, they had a special bond and connection just because he actually talked to them.
Right.
And I thought, man, how often do I just walk right by him?
Right.
Because I'm busy. I got to get to my base. I got to preach a sermon.
That's right. 4-string
No time for
thunder
you,
awaits.
child.
I got to tell you about Jesus. Get out of my way.
That's right. That's right. People are hurting out there.
That's the T-shirt for this week. I got to tell you about Jesus. Get out of my way.
Oh, man. Yeah, but it was so impactful for these kids. They were in tears because like their friend who joked with them about donuts.
Yep.
Had passed away. If I died, they'd be like, "Oh well, yeah, he was long-winded anyway." I mean, I don't
Someone
have
else
that
will tell me
relationship
about
with
Jesus.
him. He was pushing me around.
True.
So that's
Yeah.
powerful. That really is powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful. And I think, I think sometimes we struggle with, especially if you're trying to look across generations, and especially back generations, like we are often looking for ways to, like, how do I modify behavior because I see certain behaviors as destructive. And I think one of the reminders here is that, like, it's often not that simple. Because and we've talked about this, right? Like Jesus is after gospel transformation. A behavior modification follows because you've been transformed by the gospel. And like even some of the things that we find destructive to people, yes, sometimes you just got to grab a hand away from the stove. But like, especially the older kids are getting, like you're getting into the high, junior high-ish, and kids are getting older faster. I don't know if that's your experience, Todd, but like it feels to me like it's just, and I don't know how it's happening, because like part of things, it seems like we're not requiring maturity in society, but then the types of things kids are exposed to adds a level of assumed maturity to it, and so like it's a very difficult thing. It's kind of like sending a 17-year-old off to war. You're like, here's the most like responsible thing you could possibly be in your life to someone who can barely drive and can't buy cigarettes. Like, there's a dichotomy in that. We're just, as opposed to sending them to war, we're just saying, like, good luck avoiding the junk on YouTube and late night Netflix. But like, it just makes you think that everything has a cause. Like everything's more gray, everything's more nuanced, everybody's more complicated than a trend. Like people are oftentimes, and we see this totally as adults, like we reach for something that God created for good, and then we find a way that it gets twisted and it's harmful to us. But the urge for it was right. The urge for certain types of relationships, the urge for certain types of communities. And we're like, boy, look at all those folks who are creating this kind of shadowed community of people over here that are different than all the other things. And we're like, well, the desire to be in community and to find mutual care and concern about each other, like why would that be a problem? That's not a problem. But like, because it's not like this thing over here, then people get concerned about that. But at its core, before we reach for either broad generalizations or thoughts on, like, they just have to stop doing that or stop thinking that. I mean, it has to come from somewhere, and all of it, like, as you start to peel it away, is it like, what do people think about themselves? How do they feel about the world around them? And frankly, what is the world telling them in the way that they're interacting? And how are we contributing to that? Even something so simple as, I kind of wonder if Coach Grady thought much about what he said.
No.
Right. He didn't.
No.
He just said, I see this.
No.
He says the thing. It didn't go like, Gordon's life changed forever.
Right.
I flipped him
Right.
over. But it was, regardless of like how you might take it, it was a look at you and says, I've been thinking about you, and here's the thing I'm going to say to
Right.
you, and then it does what it does.
And I think that's, again, it was a moment in time, but you have to be brave enough to step into that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he cared about me enough. And, of course, I'd played for him for 4 years. And, that's just, we had a great relationship because you just had relationships with your coaches.
Yep.
And that's why coaching is such a powerful tool
Yep.
with kids even now.
Yeah.
Because you're with those people every day. But as a leader, as a person, you just have to be willing to step into the moment and take a risk.
Yeah.
And he did that. And, he was at each one of our kids' weddings, and he's my biggest fan, and I'm his biggest fan.
Yep.
It really does make you feel like they know something you don't when someone is willing to step into a moment like that, right? Like to have a person come up and say, whatever, a thing, and like you stand there awestruck for a minute and go, what does he know that I don't? What is this? You know what I'm saying? Like for a second, you're like, is everything I think that I knew about myself that led me up to all the decisions I made to boom right here? And then this dude says a thing, and you're like, okay, I'm new. We'll do something different. And like the boldness of someone willing to, because like that's awkward. If you tried to plan it, it would be contrived and awkward. You're like, I can't wait till I run into so and so. Just when they're walking out of the school, and I'm going to say this whiz bang thing, and like it would come off so adulty, really, right? It would come up formulaic and adulty, opposed to heart things.
Let's be real.
That's right.
That's
right.
And that's the other thing I think you've got to be with people, with kids. You got to be real, and they need to see human emotion out of you. They need to have somebody, because there's too many people. There are too many people these days not taking responsibility or saying they were wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say I was wrong because I'm practiced at it and I'm pretty good at it. A lot
I'm
of
getting
times.
real good.
I'm not only good at being wrong, but also admitting it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just, you got to be real with them, and kids in general, they can see fake a mile away.
Yeah.
That is 100% true.
They are so good at that.
Yep.
They know real and they know fake, and so they pick that up. And
Yep.
you talk about Coach Gady, know that, and my son AJ put together a video. Had different people I've worked with in schools, 3 or 4 former players, friends. Anyway, one of the players on there was a kid from Manning. And he played at the University of Iowa, football. But he said, I remember you pulled me onto the steps in the Manning gym, and you were the first coach that ever told me to get my stuff together, and this is how you need to act. I think it's when he decided he was going to the University of Iowa, and he's kind of acting a fool.
Yeah.
And he said, you just told me how I needed to act. And I don't remember that conversation.
Oh, right.
But he did.
Yeah.
So, and I think I probably had that conversation because Coach Gady was brave enough to do that with me. So you pass that stuff along, and one conversation could change my life, and that conversation could have helped change Jared's life.
Yep.
And if Jared has that conversation with one of his boys, on down the line.
Yep.
So it's generational.
Yep.
But I think we have a responsibility to the people who have impacted our life. My dad, Coach Gady, other teachers, other coaches, other friends, other peers who have impacted our life, like our Mount Rushmore of friends.
Yep.
But we have an obligation to them to pay that forward too, and to use what they've taught us, or it's wasted.
Yeah, right.
And that doesn't respect them.
Right. You don't want to be the guy in the drive-thru who's supposed to pay it forward to the next guy, but just takes the 2 lunches and moves on.
Yeah.
And
That's lame.
especially for like the right kid. They've not had any to cross that boundary and say something. Like, you have to care about them. You have to care enough that you didn't let them walk by, right? Like there's all kinds of kids out there acting a fool, and like how many of them get a guy that pulls them aside and cares about them enough to say something that actually might offend them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like if you look back at your relationship with your own kids, I say stuff that should offend my own kids all the time. hey, your behavior is not where it needs to be. It's going to cause you this thing. You really should consider changing it around to do this differently, right? And like, because I love my kids to the degree that I love them, that's conversations we have all the time. And so kids that aren't necessarily, your biological kids, I don't know what house they grew up in or what community they have around them that anybody's willing to step in and go, actually, you should really consider doing something differently. Here's the path, right?
Yeah.
And like, some of us are so scared. It's still fear. We've talked about this for 3 weeks now, but like, we're so afraid of like the output of some of the kids, and like the things that they're doing or the acts that they're committing or the way that they're acting, that like we're just not willing to dive in deep and like show a little bit of give a crap. Like, I don't care what you're doing on your outside. Here's what's true about you. I love you. And I think you should probably make a different decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of shallow stuff out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the phone's shallow, like you said. If you're just relying on this screen and how many likes you get on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the kids are doing now.
Yeah.
If you're just relying on those likes and those comments for your self-worth, and they are,
Yeah.
then that's shallow.
Yeah. Ooh.
And there's got to be more. They've got to give more.
That's a good point. Where the crowd is fickle, be the non-fickle person. Be the person that's there anyway. That's there regardless.
Right.
Where the rest of the world are like tossing seas. I mean, you're the still pond. You're the boat, man. Because otherwise, without that, you don't even know the difference. Like, you don't have something to compare it to. Like, what the heck is this Stone Cold Rock doing over here? I thought the whole world was a bouncy sea. And to see a dude who smiles at you every day, who knows where you work and cares about you, isn't after you because you're another like to them and they're a like to you. Like, how would you even know the difference? It's the same reason that, like, you always encourage folks who are growing up and to hang out with families that have good marriages. Like, how would you possibly know unless you saw the difference? Unless you saw exposure, you're like, boy, I didn't even know people didn't yell at each other like that every night. Or like, hey man, both parents are in the house at the same time, no joke. Right? Like, you wouldn't even. It's not that you're not dumb. You just have no idea. Like, there's all kinds of things where, like, I've heard somebody. This happens at work too. Like, I'm a problem solving dude. That's my job. I go in and people and there's like every once in a while. In fact, probably twice a week, someone says something like, well, hot dang, I had no idea. That opened like a whole nother trench of the world that I just hadn't even. How would I know? Except for someone said something to me, and now I've got a different way to kind of measure and understand the things going on around me. And so, like, where the rest of the world is jumping around, what does it take to be a rock? A little bit of give a crap, a little bit of smile, a little bit of a hey, I looked
Be
at
stable.
you. Yeah, right.
Just be there.
And the funny part about that telescope discussion is, like, we say science flips and flops every 50 years. God been the same. He doesn't change.
Right.
He doesn't change, and like, as a result, we don't change either.
Yeah.
Right? Your behavior doesn't cause me to change. Whatever adverse behavior that brings us fear and worry, it doesn't cause me to change because God is steady. His grace is steady. None of that stuff ever moves.
Right.
Ever.
Right. Yeah. That's a good call. Like, just the underlying notion of communicating a sense of reliability, of stability, when, like, getting like to what you were saying earlier, if people won't take responsibility for things and like commitment is not, people don't they see it in marriage relationships, they see it, just with things changing so often, people don't work at the same place, not like people used to be for extended amounts of times in the same spot. It's not the general path anymore. Like, it just feels like things are constantly in flux. What is stable? Well, if we're not speaking to the things that are unchanging, how would someone even know? Yeah. So, one of the things that I was interested in, Todd, is I think, you have a unique perspective in your work. Is like, I think about folks who look at school systems and kids and even activities and things, and from a Christian perspective, I think it's tempting to go, that just seems like a big bucket of risk, man. Like the schools today, kind of like the kids today, right? Like, the schools today are blah, blah, blah. And like, it feels the tug over, here's all the things that the church has going on or that we think is important. And here's the tug of activities and things against those. And like, the various things that frankly schools are having to deal with. Like, you're treading in an open forum trying to handle a lot of different things coming at you. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, in what ways do you look at public schooling and coaching and those types of things with hope? And are there ways in which you go, here are the unique challenges they're dealing with, and here's where people like the caution is warranted?
Well, it just all goes back to that first story and why I believe so strongly in what I did for so many years, and why I believe it's so valid. Because whether we're going to be somebody's best hope, I tell my coaches, or I told the coaches or teachers, if I had a chance, if not you, then who?
Mm-hmm.
And if not me, then who? And so as a leader, I had to have that mentality of, if I'm not going to step out there and risk myself with kids, coaches, adults, parents, community members,
Yep.
then who is?
Yeah.
And so the same was true of coaches and teachers, directors, whoever's working with those kids, whoever's working with people. If not you, then who?
Yeah.
And so it was just always driven by that. And, I just always believed that every job we do is a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just where the ministry lies.
Yep.
And so whatever job you're doing you're there for a reason.
Yep.
And it's not a mistake.
Yep.
There are divine moments in every day, and sometimes you come across them, and sometimes you don't know them till years later.
Yeah.
That it was a divine moment.
Yep.
But we have to believe. I mean, God can use everything for good for those that are called by Him, and He can use every moment that we have down the road, and maybe it's just that seed that's planted. So that's just how I carried into every day.
Yeah.
Was not knowing, but not caring that I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the impact was. I was just going to try and be faithful and show up and do the job. Now, when you start wrapping that around what education has become,
Yeah.
If not us, then who?
Right.
It's still the same thing.
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes you had to speak to say, no, that's wrong. And sometimes maybe I was too silent.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you had to know when it was good to be silent and when it was good to speak.
Yeah.
And you knew when there might be a time later to speak to somebody who heard something said that maybe you didn't think was correct, or you could go a different way. And you could have that conversation on the side.
Yeah.
But like, Mike said earlier, we don't need to throw fire and brimstone on everybody.
Right.
But you still, I think, if you're a person of faith and you're in the public schools, people still know you're a person of faith.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to shout it from the top of the school building or when people are walking in the room. Now, there's a time when we need to be faithful to share.
Yeah.
When that can be shared.
Yep.
But I think we start by just living the life.
Mm-hmm.
And being consistent in the life that we live.
Yeah.
No matter how much school has changed. Now, you do have choices. I admire the people of faith who are working in other states that are a bit wacko, in my opinion.
Yep.
And
talking to you, Missouri.
So, I'm blessed to teach in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I mean, I was blessed to be where I was and didn't have to worry about that so much.
Yep. Yep.
And some of the communities I was in, but I just think it's important to be who you are and be consistent in that.
Yep.
And be faithful to that. And then the opportunities to really have a deeper conversation, they come in times of distress and tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I've been able to probably share faith more than any.
Yep.
Is in those dark times.
Yep.
Or when you go see somebody in a hospital that you may be in there alone with them, and that's your moment.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's a really good. I think I would always say that when when people are running out, the people of Jesus are running in, right? It's been true with, emergencies and natural disasters. Like when people are like, we got to get out of here. Like who's running? It's the Christians, it's the missionaries. They're like, we're going in. It happened in the Black Plague. Like one of the reasons Christianity spikes. This was one of the books we were talking about last week on the Rise of Christianity by Rodney Stark. But like one of the reasons Christianity grows the way it does is because like when everyone else was running away from all the people dying, the Christians were running in. And people met Jesus that way. And so, then you look at, I think, we talked about this even during some of the COVID stuff. We're like, public school is hard. What a hard thing to do is to try to like meld everybody into something that doesn't create just like a giant explosion. We're like, we're debating as a society the same thing Pilate's debating with Jesus. Like, what is truth? This is the conversation we're having. And so like there's fires all over the place. But if not the people of Jesus running in to where the groups are gathered of people who need reminded of true stable things and real and deep things as evidenced in lives of people, if not us, then who? Right? And so like I think there's a caution in going like to what do I subject? I mean, what do you subject your kids? What do you subject your own kids? Like, is there risk in systems and societies like that? I get that. I totally get that. But like where we have we feel like there's a pretty good bellwether, an indicator that like true, stable, right, good news types of things are needed. Well, then that's where the people of Jesus are needed. I think that's a good way to think about it. Because that's true everywhere. I mean, like, what the heck kind of place I might, where does everyone else work except for maybe Dan? Although Dan's worked at Target. Yeah, that's right. And the Burger King. And, right? Like, where else is not a hotbed of, like, all kinds of stuff? Like, people believe all kinds of things.
Right.
It comes to a big head and is at the most influential in those years where people have an opportunity for influence and, like, this is why the college years are so formidable. People can go from believing one thing, you show up and do a college, and like you're like, what the heck happened, man? The world was supposed to get deeper, and somehow it got different, And so, like I get that, but like I think that's a healthy way for Christians to think about it. I think that the conversations about your own kids, activities, and all kinds of that stuff, I think is maybe a slightly different conversation. But like as we think about institution like that, like what do we expect a human governmental type of institution to reflect, but the chaos often of what man himself has tried to build.
Oh, exactly. It's going to be nothing less.
Right.
And so if we get caught up in trying to change every little thing that happens, you control two things every day, your attitude and your effort.
Yeah.
And that's it. And if I let my attitude get distracted by a policy or a procedure that I don't agree with, okay, I if I can't change it, then I've just got to have the right attitude and try to work with it.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose like you could spend all your day drawing lines in the sand.
Absolutely.
Or be the guy that remains stable even as the lines get drawn, the lines move, people dash around about it, and yet the truth persists. The good news remains.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like I've been thinking about this a lot last couple of weeks, but like. And it circles around to like how I pray and like having like I'm talking to my Father, right? Like this steady, calming presence in my life, that like you're not praying at a God, you're praying at your Father, and like it's just so awesome how that translates down to people, like it resonates with me something fierce. There was this movie that I watched, and I can't remember what it was, but like it had to do with fathers, and like so many guys that are like it had to do with either their dad split or wasn't there, or they didn't have a strong dad type figure in their life, and like they just wanted like the blessing of Jacob. They just wanted their dad to say, I want what's best for you. Yeah. I'm looking out for you, and I'm intentional about putting this blessing on you. Like I love you, And like this one guy was talking about it. He's like, we did this one Sunday. Like we just said, I don't know how many of you guys are feeling like you didn't get that blessing you needed, but like we're going to give it to you today from God. And like droves of dudes getting up out of their chair, and going down to the front just to be prayed over.
I just want a blessing.
And not in like the cheesy
right.
I want stuff way, but like like this unmovable, steady figure that knows all and loves completely and puts a hand on you and goes, I'm for you. I'm for you. Right? And like, if that's not what kids need, I don't know what they need. That's that's what I need.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, and like, it changes the way that you interact with God, and like, hopefully it changes the way that we interact with especially kids around us. Like, I mean, just some of these stories, some of these environments that the kids are coming from, and like, you want to nail their outgoing behavior, and like, there's broken in there, just a broken, and you can't fix it. God can. Jesus can redeem all of this, but you're not the fixer, right? You're the one that says, I know you, I love you, I'm for you. What's happening with you, you know? That's just such a cool, and that's the thing is like, with a career like yours, you get to look back and go like, there's if there's nothing else they can depend on, maybe they're short on cash and like they don't get to eat lunch every day, or they didn't get shoes, or like their dad is flaky as wall, whatever. Todd Gordon will be out there on lunchtime, hands folded, going, "Hey, how's it going?" You know what I'm
You
saying?
got the administrator posed down pretty good.
Yeah, you just
Fold those arms.
yeah, what's happening right now? I mean, it sounds so stupid and simple, you know, but like, just being present, and like, it's us going in when everybody's going out. Yeah, there's parts of the government are a mess. The government's a mess. Public education's a mess. Whatever. But like, we should run for government, right? What better place than to put God's people in? Same thing with public education. We're not running out. We're running in. We're part of the solution here. You know,
all that's a mess, and most importantly, people are a mess.
People are a mess.
And what are the one thing we can influence more than anything, and that's the people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's powerful too to consider kind of where the conversation started, where you use your influence in effective ways. Like, your influence isn't cheap influence. Like, it's, yes, I care about you. Yes, I love you. And actually, I care about you so much that like, I'm willing to say something that actually matters, that should make a difference to you. Because I think you know, there's a. To your earlier point, kids can smell being advertised to. This started with like the tail end of my generation and the generations that's past, and I think this is where like even some of the counter reaction to some of the like previous generation, the church is trying to catch up to like, look, we're not lame here. We got people that can play the four strings of thunder. Turn it up, you know, and like, it was to make sure that like, hey, we weren't, God's people are can do. God is awesome. He can be worshipped with something that's got some pump to it. And I think that was great, right? And then there became a point where, like, kids grew up and they became so averse to being advertised to that as soon as the music in the church started feeling like the music that was on the radio, they're like, no, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Are you trying to trick me?
Trying to sucker me in.
Yeah, right. You're trying to drag me into something, right? And like, what are these lights? Like, people get so hypersensitive to being advertised to. And here's the thing. The music the church was doing was just as righteous as it was 10 years ago. Like, it didn't matter. It's not that the music didn't change. The hearts behind it didn't change. But the people become so suspicious. Like, the tail end of my generation and into the next one just became real hippy-dippy about the whole thing. They're like, bring the acoustic guitars back out, man. I don't trust anything else. I think you're trying to get me to love Jesus because I tapped my toe, and I don't want it.
Yeah, that fourth wall's gone.
Right.
Right? Like, I'm watching a show with my girls, right? Like, we sit down and watch this show. And like, my oldest one will sit down and go, "This is my favorite story arc of this show." I'm like, "What? You can't just sit and like immerse yourself in the show and be entertained." You're like, "This is really well written." I'm like, "Shut up! You're ruining this. It's a character. I believe it to be real for the half hour, you know." And she's like analyzing the thing, and you know, I'm like,
right.
What's wrong with you kids? I like the same thing with like the way they play video games, right? They're not immersed in it in a way that like they go beat the boss. They're immersed in it in a way that's like, I just want to roam around the world and check the whole thing out. And like, that's a glitch, I can tell. You know, like they look on how it was designed and how it was made and what the game was trying to get them to do, and then they will do the opposite. They're like, I'm just going to go build a hut. I'm supposed to be fighting this army over here, but I like building huts. So I'm just going to run over here to this other ice world where there's nobody at.
Right.
I'm going to build a hut. I'm like, I just, you know.
It's a behind-the-curtain generation, which means that, like, if what's behind the curtain is genuine and matches what was in front of the curtain, then it's believable.
That's right.
Right?
And the church don't want to be caught being the Wizard of Oz.
Right. No one is fooled. No one is fooled by the quote they found in the newspaper. right? Because they know it got massaged. They know someone emailed some guy and said, hey, what do you think? And some guy looked over it for about 50 hours and goes, here's what we're going to say. And that's what got back out. What they're going to do is they're going to go to Reddit, look for the secretary that was in the room and like, what did that guy really say before he said that thing? You know? And which like, I like that. But like, it means that the people of Jesus, you know, where perhaps there was something showy about, you know, I don't know, certainly the 80s, parts of the 90s, like, because we wanted to believe something. We wanted to believe that, like, Jesus wasn't being left behind in some of that stuff. But then there's a notion of, like, hyper integrity. Like people won't even... Sometimes our posturing is like, right, we're like, hey, man, I'm not great, but I'm trying. This is what looks like trying. And sometimes this behind the curtain folks goes, I don't even want you to try. I just want you to suck and do it openly. I'm like, well, I'm not sure that's the healthiest way to think about it. Right? Like, it's not implicitly righteous, but it is what it is like such a concern about being advertised to, and that someone's trying to deceive it. Like, kids will look at a commercial and go, they put red on there because it's trying to draw my attention.
Yeah.
Because everyone started going to psychology class when they were in high school, right?
In the coffee to make it look fresher. I ain't buying that.
Right. And they're like, I got lied to. I'm going to buy this dump like Sanka because it doesn't posture above its pay grade. Here's the can. Go to town.
Stir it up.
That's right. Anyway, but it's such an interesting thing because like that is reacting to something. It's not a bunch of jerk kids, just like it wasn't a bunch of jerk kids the generation before. They're reacting to something, and it's okay to honor that. You don't have to let it like run off the leash and crap in your yard, but like it's okay to go, okay, I get it. What did I think before this that can then refine how I'm taking in to make sure I didn't overcrank on the thing, you know?
And don't make them be like the previous generation.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not going to. That's just a fight you're not going to win.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why we got to meet them where they're at and try to learn what they're doing and
Yep.
where they're coming from.
Which I think rolls back again to that previous article is like, where's our humility? Like, as opposed to going like, look at how wrong this generation is. It's like, what have they got the right line on that I'm missing? I mean, and like, you're going to be a source of wisdom to people. Like, there are things that you've learned that you're going to be able to influence kids, and they're going to be hungry for because they do want true wisdom. But what they don't want is this denial of their entire view of the world. Because like, if you don't believe there's something redeeming in it, you're the problem. There's an arrogance to that. And boy, actually, if generationally we were all like looking to pass on good, righteous wisdom, and in humility going, now how can I learn from what they see? What are our excesses, and how can I know those quicker? Boy, that seems healthy.
Yeah.
That seems healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Wait. So, Todd, if people are interested in your in hearing further bits about your wisdom, like you have a website where people can go and connect.
Yeah, pretty witty. ToddAGordon.com.
There it is.
ToddAGordon.com. Yeah, I publish every day. Just a little quick article to read. I do a newsletter on Thursdays. Just moments where I think about moments of leadership. Moments to be better, moments from social media, something I picked up to share, moments from something I've read in the past week or two, and then a moment to remember, which is always a memory of some sort. So I do that every Thursday, and just random thoughts from my head. It's just always looking for things that are happening that are probably leadership moments or leadership driven or just quick little thoughts to help somebody during the day.
That's awesome. All right, so go to toddagordon.com, and you can interact with Todd. Like, you can see the stuff that he's posting, and I'm sure there's ways to contact you. Maybe you got questions for Todd, or you're just kind of interested in hearing more of his thoughts. Maybe you want to have him on your podcast. Now, Todd is a prolific podcaster.
Yeah.
He's a man of double podcasts right at the moment. So what are the two podcasts that you're doing?
Well, we're starting one in our 5th season called Beyond the Bench, and we started that 4 years ago, going on 5 now. We had a lot of athletic directors leaving the field after 3 years. We found that 3 years, if you could make it past 3 years as an athletic director, you could probably make it a career if you wanted to. But we had 1 year, the year I was president of the Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association, 75 ADs leave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's 75 out of 300 and some.
Ooh.
So we just wanted to provide a resource to, hey, we want to encourage you. And that's all we've done in that podcast is encouraged. Now we're taking a little bit more towards leadership now because we've kind of started a leadership side to beyond the bench to the 2 guys I do that with. And then I'm working for a company called Bound now, and we are a sports management, web-based, where schools use us. And so a partner and I, we've decided we're doing a podcast just twice a week, just 10, 12 minutes. We have a little leadership component in it and a little how-to or, hey, think about doing this in your job type coaching, AD type stuff. So just doing that, and that's called Bound for Greatness.
Nice. And, here would be my encouragement to you guys that are listening is that I cannot imagine very many situations of which, like, hey, okay, this feels like, we were targeting, ADs or like, but like, just think about the types of problems those folks are trying to solve. Like there's coordination issues, like think of all the different parties that you're trying to manage in all kinds of things. And then you're talking about how do I encourage leaders to lead well, interacting with kids and a lot of the things that we've been talking about here, methods of which to engage people, of which to call them up to kind of the best selves. Like I just, if you normalize some of the context of where some of the stuff is coming from, it's so surprising where wisdom that applies to something you're not even thinking about has something that kicks off for you and that you see that you can apply in your, I mean, even as parents, even as spouse. Like, here's the deal: your husband, what they need encouragement, man. Like they'll we've been talking about this a lot in some of we've been going through First Peter. It's been a little harsh on me, but like oftentimes your spouse will live down to your view of them or live up to it. Right. And so, and with the amount of, we talked about this a little bit, I think, within the last few shows, but like, what are you doing with your influence to your close relationships? And like some of the stuff that you might be like, well, that might feel superficial. It's for over here. Are there parts of that 10, 12 minutes where you're like, are there nuggets in there that are more broadly applicable? And so I just maybe give it a shot. Maybe give it a shot on your drive to the store or something.
Well, I think that's such a great point because I think one of the things that I struggled with and had to come to reality with is sometimes the people that get the least of us are our families.
Right.
I mean, no matter what we're doing. So my 3 kids sometimes got the least amount of me. I gave my best stuff between 8 and 4 or 8 and 6 if I was still coaching. I gave it to that group.
Yep.
And I'd go home and I was tired. Yep. They didn't get my best. My wife didn't always get my best.
Yeah.
Even as a leader, an administrator, you're trying to lead people. Sometimes I gave my best there, and I didn't give her my best.
Yeah.
And so I think I had to come to grips and come with the reality that I got to be better at home.
Yeah.
I got to be better with my kids. I got to be better with my wife.
Yep.
And that's a humbling thing to come to grips with because you're giving your best out there.
Right.
During that day.
Right.
But then you go home and you're not giving your best.
And
you're cranky.
If anybody would ask you to make a list of things that are important to you, they'd be up there. They'd be up running the top, right? And then you're like, this is out of balance.
But how do we treat them?
How did I let this get so out of balance?
Right.
Well, and and it's got to be so tough too because like again, it's speaking of the environments that you're working in. I mean, I don't. Maybe it's because I'm more of an introverted type of guy, but like I mean, I get drained dealing with folks. Like I just don't. Some people are energized by people. It takes a lot of effort for me, and I know it's good. And like I get. It is good. It is reciprocal, but like it just, I'll come away from conversations and just feel just kind of sapped. And so like I would look and go, man, I just gave a lot of energy there, and I think it was for good, and I'm trying to be helpful and talk to people and encourage them and blah blah blah. But then then I come home and I'm drained to the people who also need my best.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, frankly, fellas, it's really easy to get real cranky about this. Not only because you're tired from the other stuff, but you feel underappreciated. It's like this person's not. Look, my wife's giving me business because she's not getting my best, and you feel like, hey, I gave my best over here. She has every right to expect your best. I'm sorry, you're on the hook for your best all the time. I'm sorry.
24/7.
I'm sorry.
Give your best. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I owe some apologies.
That's next week.
Next week.
I feel like Ben owes me an apology. Actually.
Yeah. But boy, if I'm gonna need another journal. All the places that didn't get my best but should have. Hey, you've been listening to Live from the Path. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Todd Gordon. Again, go to toddagordon.com and you can hear more. Again, you pick up on those bits of wisdom. Be open that other people's contexts in the world can speak into yours in ways that you didn't imagine. And you've met Todd. He sounds like a lovely fellow with a lot of really good experience and a good view on the world. So, I mean, go check it out.